All right, good evening, folks. For your listening pleasure, we have no other than Jimmy from Brooklyn. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Doing well.
Glad to hear it. You'd said you wanted about an hour and a half to 2 hours for tonight's broadcast, so it's now 9:05 Eastern. So let's say I come back at say 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central, and check in with you then, see if you need another half an hour or so.
Sounds good.
Okay, with that, sir, the floor is yours. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. I didn't plan this. I just came in the house and I called up Lee, and now we're going. I didn't really prepare anything, but I want to remind people of some stuff. Years ago, Angela Davis was involved. She's a communist. She ran for vice president, the Communist Party ticket. She works for Castro. She's been to Cuba several times. When Castro came to New York, she pulled up in a cab and got right in the Cuban mission to the UN. I was standing outside talking to one of the Secret Service guys. And so she's a hardline commie. When the communists were taking over Nicaragua, you had the Indians in Nicaragua, the indigenous people, on one coast, and the other coast you had a group of black people that may have been descendants of slaves or escaped slaves. So both of those groups, including the regular Hispanic mixed people in Nicaragua, were trying to stop the communists. Angela Davis was a top person in a group called American Indian Movement. Because as I read the past in some of these other presentations of mine on this channel and other places, I got to keep saying, the Communist Party is in every country. It works in every single group. They penetrate right-wing or conservative groups to push them to do bad things or to work to discredit them. That's called discredit from within. But they work to bring every group to accept the leadership of the communists. And once the communists are successful in getting things that each group thinks or do need, whether legitimate or not, the communists build influence. But the goal is to get everybody convinced you're only really going to be free and happy and safe under socialism. So they only help people to gain influence. The same way a pedophile may help a little boy throw a football or swing a baseball bat, or a pimp might help a young girl. You know, they're doing it because they have an ulterior motive. So the communists in Nicaragua, the Indians, the communist government, the Sandinistas wanted to reach the Indians to try to turn them around. So Angela Davis was a top person from this communist group in America, the American Indian Movement. She went down to Nicaragua to meet with the Mosquito Indians, and they basically told her to go to hell, basically. So that didn't work. But I just want people to understand how the communists work. They're in every single country. So when you think of the Soviet countries and the socialist countries, when communism supposedly helped, all those communists did not die. They stayed there. Now, some of them may have given up Marxism and communism, but we don't know that. Because in a free democratic republic like America, where most people are pretty satisfied with everything, even though we're not living under any harsh conditions, the communists are able to build movements here. So they could get people that have no problems in their life and still pull them into the communist movement. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, the Communist Party is key to what's going on. So Angela Davis was involved in, connected to a cop killing. I believe it was a shootout in a courtroom. So she was heavily involved, and I'm not 100% sure I remember all the details. But when Angela Davis was going on trial, there were demonstrations all over the world in support of Angela Davis. So in the communist publications, they write that in the snow igloos of the Alaska, the North Pole, there's a picture of Angela Davis hanging on the wall. In the mud and straw huts of Africa, there's pictures of Angela Davis on the wall. But then the communists write these, and there were protests and demonstrations all over the world, almost every country. And then the communists say, these spontaneous outpourings of support for Angela Davis were organized by the communist parties. So it was not like today there's this word they say organic. In other words, it didn't come naturally. I don't like that word, but that's the word that's in use now. This was not organic. This was the communist parties making demonstrations and protests against what they thought or claimed harassment of Angela Davis and trying to frame her. And the showing of support for Angela Davis. So it was all over the world. And they said these spontaneous showings of support, but then it goes on to say were organized by the communist parties. So that means the Communist Party in every country was connected. How would they know her plight? How would they know to do this all in the same time? It just shows you they're all connected. Now that's very important because when Fidel Castro and his group of 8 or 10, whatever the number was, when they made a revolution in Cuba and took over, it was portrayed here that Castro is a George Washington. The New York Times said Castro is a George Washington, just like they thought Mao was an agrarian reformer and Stalin was pretty cool, Uncle Joe. So you had the spontaneous showing of support for Angela Davis worldwide, organized by the communist parties. That's a plural. I emphasize the S, the plural. So when the communists took over Cuba, in some of the communist publications, they say there was a big, organized, coordinated communist underground in Cuba before anybody heard of Castro. So you see, before Castro and before Angela Davis, every country had a communist party highly organized. And then we saw in the President Carter, all of a sudden, seemed like out of nowhere, there was kind of like spontaneous protest against the Shah of Iran. Now, the Shah of Iran was a bulwark against Soviet expansionism in that part of the world. So the Soviets were always trying to penetrate and do some things in Iran. And the Shah had a pretty good, I don't know them, maybe they did some harsh measures, but when you're trying to protect yourself from the enemy like the Soviets or the Nazis, sometimes you have to be a little tough. So you had the spontaneous showings of support for Angela Davis, organized by the communist parties worldwide. You had a total huge underground communist movement, Communist Party in Cuba before Castro. And the Soviet publications, the Communist Party of Iran, took credit for toppling the Shah. I just want people to see the importance of the communist parties. So this is just the way things continue now. So we had spontaneous demonstrations here after George Floyd got killed or died, allegedly by the cop, and the cop was using the idea of the cop putting his leg on sort of the shoulder near the neck to hold somebody down. That's actually in police training in that state. That's actually in the police manual. The diagrams show you that. So what that cop did was nothing illegal or nothing wrong. And if there's something wrong, that's what the police taught. So they shouldn't have blamed that particular cop. But I guess they figured it's better to get this cop convicted and put him in jail than have a continuing riot where thousands of people might die. But it just shows you now, it was not a spontaneous protest coming out for George Floyd. Because in the communist publications I read, and I brought this to the attention of a lot of people, I mentioned it on the radio before the Floyd riots. I called up Sebastian Gorka on his radio show, New York radio show, and I said that the communist publications are reminiscing how they ended the war in Vietnam by organized protests in America and worldwide. And the communists then were writing about in that same publication. They were writing like a chronology, like through the decades, what they've achieved by getting out in the street. They talked about the Occupy Wall Street protests. They talk about before that it was the protests against the World Trade Organization. And there was a couple of other ones. And then they write, after putting that down, the history of the protests and how they exerted influence and got their goals achieved. They write that we're better organized, better experienced, better trained, better coordinated. And if Trump tries to steal the election, we're going to be out in the street bigger and better and more militant than ever. That organized communists, just like the organized communist movement that helped Castro take over Cuba, the organized communist movement that got the Shah out of Iran, and that got the radical Muslim terrorists working with the Soviets in charge of Iran. You had the communists here. They got the Shah overthrown of the protest. So I brought this to Sebastian Gorka's attention that in the communist publication they were talking about being better organized, more militant, more experienced. They talked about the Occupy Wall Street, all the protests they did. And they wrote then, if Trump tries to steal the election, we're going to be out in the street bigger, better, more militant than ever. That's what came out when Floyd got killed. So that shows you the extent and the strength of the Communist Party. The Communist Party is a party of a new type. Everybody in the party has to be not just in the party active. They have to be out in other groups. They put them in right-wing groups to mislead them, to misdirect them, maybe to discredit them. But they work in, I read some of the stuff in one of my presentations here, where in America, they're working in 30 or so different groups in America, different ethnic, racial, political groups. And around the world, when America had the Communist Party meeting in the early 90s, they got the congratulations and everything from about, I think it was around 40 different communist parties worldwide. So this is the problem we have now, because that organization that came out for Floyd, that is bigger and stronger and more militant now. That's what's out now, attacking ICE and attacking the police and working against Trump. And they influence far more people than their numbers should be capable of, because there's no counter to it other than Trump pointing at them and saying, you're fake news. It's not just fake news. These people are highly organized and highly trained. Now, before we reach this point, in the communist publications, they repeatedly wrote they have to get out and influence the youth. They have to get them young. And Lenin had written, give me a student for 10 years, I'll make a permanent revolutionary out of him. So now the communists and all the groups working with the communists, the perverts, the subverters, the perverters, all that craziness is now targeting children, toddlers in pre-K, when they have transgenders sitting there looking like, just looking like streetwalkers with serious issues. It's amazing. So this is the problem we have now, because the communists could get out in the street. If, God forbid, we lose many more soldiers or maybe civilians die in Iran or Lebanon, the communists have the ability to uprise. And in a Muslim country, who do you think the communists will be working with mainly? Would be the Muslims. Now, the Soviets in their publications, they write Muslim books for the Muslims, Qurans and other things. So if the Soviets church, I don't know why Mike Savage and Tucker Carlson embraced the KGB. It's like insanity. But there's so many people that could be considered insane here. But that's all the work of communists. Now, people have to be maybe have an issue, a mental, emotional problem or something, because not everybody is vulnerable to propaganda. But the propaganda is very good. They're very, very successful. They have psychiatrists, they have psychologists, they have people that work social work, people that study America. They study every country they're in order to shape policies and change mass moods and mass thought patterns. So Lenin's party of a new type. Now, I found some stuff here, because the communist connection to the Muslim terrorism is very big. And most of my good stuff on that is packed away, divided up and packed away. And the only stuff I have around me now is just a little bit of stuff, but let me see what I have here. So the Soviet publication here, celebrating, let me see what year this is, 1984. Now, some people tell me what happened in 84 is not important now. And yet, we study the founding fathers. We study Abraham Lincoln and the slavery. We study George Washington, the great statements of that era. So when people tell me that's old news, no. The communists have a beginning. They have different stages of development. And when you see how they work and you see their successes years ago, you should be aware that they're even more successful now, because our side is more vulnerable, more susceptible, and more ignorant. Because back when the communists were gaining a foothold in America, most of the people were loyal, patriotic, good, devout Christians, had certain beliefs, was hard to penetrate. Well, the communists worked to weaken that, and that would make us more vulnerable. We have no defense mechanisms, no knowledge of the greatness of our country and history. Whatever bad they show, they only show the bad. When I was just getting out of my teenage years, in our crowd, people we know, not buddies, but in our circle of friends, we had a friend that won one of the Mr. America contests. So this guy won a Mr. America contest, and we all wanted to look like him. Maybe not as big, but we all wanted to look good. You know, you look good, you guys, you're healthy, you play ball better, you attract good-looking women. You know, normal guys, that's how we are. Can't deny that. But we didn't want to work out with weights 4 or 5 hours. The guy was never happy. He would look in the mirror. He would talk about one muscle strain, one part of a muscle that's not built right or defined enough. He was always nitpicking. So we looked at him as being pretty perfect. And he would just tear himself down. He was like, I don't know, he was like psychotic, kind of paranoid that he wasn't good enough. Well, the state he's in with with a perfect build, in our opinion, and all the girls that were attracted to him, he found things wrong with him. Now, that's kind of a psychiatric problem, but the way he was able to find things wrong with him when he looked perfect is the way people get Americans to look at America as so imperfect, so ungodly, so immoral, we have to be torn down and destroyed. That's like a massive brain screw, but the communists know how to do it. So let me get back here. This is 1984. This is a Soviet publication, 60th anniversary of the Lebanese Communist Party. Okay, there's a lot here, so let me just get to the stuff I kind of highlighted. The key event which prepared the ground for the establishment of a vanguard Lebanese working class party was the victory of the October Revolution in Russia. So you see that? Can't say the past doesn't count, the past doesn't matter. In 1984, they're talking about the Soviet Revolution and how that was instrumental in building the communist and workers' movement in Lebanon. So a victory of the October Revolution in Russia, which was a source of inspiration to oppressed people throughout the world. In terms of domestic development, the migration of peasants to urban areas was also considerably important. The ranks of hired industrial labor, let me pass that. The workers were beginning to fight for the economic demands, including that of higher wages and shorter work week. All this made it possible to create a party of a new type. You see? Party of a new type. That's the Communist Party. That's key. Party of a new type. It's not like any other party. Most people in the Democrat-Republican Party, they live their lives, they pay a little bit of attention, they go out and vote. Now you have committees that work to get people elected. That's different. Each party may have that. The Communist Party, each person in the party spends his life going out spreading communism, either working to weaken the target country like America or to build an anti-capitalist movement and build a broader oppositional movement as they describe it. So here they're talking about the communists gaining in building in Lebanon, of the newly formed working class, of all urban and rural working people, of progressive intellectuals, the Communist Party. That's the Communist Party of a new type. In the spring of 1925, it was joined by the Spartacus Youth League, which had a branch in Syria, and the party was renamed the Communist Party of Syria and Lebanon. It goes down here, and I'm skipping a lot. In connection with the growing threat of world war, the League to Combat Fascism in Lebanon, led by the communist Antoine Tabet. Okay, so they form a group, the League to Combat Fascism, but that was founded by a communist. Now, in America, the party of a new type, the Communist Party. I explained in one of my presentations here on this channel, the Communist Party did a fake split. The breakaway faction of the American Communist Party joined with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which was started and built by Jesse Jackson. Freedom Road Organization. In other words, various Marxist groups, radical left-wing groups, Marxist, Marxoid, all kind of the radical left, they pulled them all together into the Democratic Socialists of America, and then that penetrated the Democrat Party. So here, and that Democrat Party today is calling us fascist. So here in 1925, it goes down here, okay, 1937, they built the League to Combat Fascism, and that was founded by a communist. So back then, they built a league to fight fascism. Today, the Democrat Party and the media is fighting fascism. So the communists, anybody in the communist way, they call fascist, whether they're truly fascist or not. So this is more evidence to make the case that we're really in a communist revolution. Going down further here, in January 1944, the First Congress of the Communist Party of Syria and Lebanon advanced a program of action for the forthcoming period, linking the objectives of national liberation with those of social progress. Now, in that era, France and England had control or heavy influence throughout the Middle East. So the communists had to build a national liberation movement. So they would promote nationalism to get all the people in the country united against what they would call the oppressor, the colonial power, whether it was France or Britain. So this is how they work. First, they build a national liberation movement, and then that national liberation movement joins the world liberation movement. So a nation. So they get each group, each segment, each area, each town, each city. They get them indoctrinated to build a national movement, sort of a nationalist movement to get the foreigners out. They did that in Vietnam. The communist movement then was called the National Liberation Front. So they build a liberation movement, and then all those countries with the liberation movement joins in the World Liberation Movement, which is the Communist Party's movement. So here they're making social progress. Now, social progress, when the communists talk about social progress, that's social, cultural, political, economic, which is what the Gramsci strategy was, and Gramsci was a key into a lot of this communist movement here. It goes on here. Our people striving for liberation finally forced the colonial rulers to grant Lebanon its independence in late 1943. However, French and British troops still remained on Lebanese soil. Together with other national organizations, the communists demanded that these troops be withdrawn from Syria and Lebanon completely and without delay. It goes on here. The movement culminated in a general strike and mass demonstrations. Again, communist mass demonstrations. This is what they do. It's like they're doing it now. They do it all the time, all around the world. It's rare that we have a mass anti-communist demonstration. What's going on in Iran now is a mass anti-dictatorship, but it's not organized or coordinated. It's not professional. It's like when we get out in the street as MAGA. We can't organize like the communists because they're expert at it. So the movement culminated in a general strike and mass demonstrations which swept the country on January 1946. The Soviet Union resolutely supported the liberation struggle of the Lebanese people, okay? So the Soviet Communist Party of a new type, built by the Soviets, they work within the country to get the country to unite as a nation against the foreign colonialist. And that was organized by the Soviets. So it's the Soviet hand in Lebanon and Syria through the communist parties. So the Soviet Union resolutely supported the liberation struggle of the Lebanese people. The principled and firm Soviet position in the UN Security Council, again, the UN founded by communists and globalists, UN is not good, council frustrated the attempts by France and Britain, which were acting in collusion with the United States to retain their military presence in Lebanon. Now, the Western world, France and England, even though they let the country go, they kept forces there. because the French and British didn't Lebanese or Syrian, how it was with the British still there, even though they supposedly gave up control. But the Western powers were always worried about the Soviets taking over. And when you read these Soviet publications, you got communist parties that working in all these countries since the 20s. This one I'm reading about now was in the 20s. It doesn't matter. It's 100 years ago. It does matter. It just shows you how long it is. It's not. These are not just new uprisings. This is all planned, coordinated stuff. They have movements. They have targets and goals. It goes on. Eventually, foreign troops were forced to withdraw from Lebanon. British troops in October, French in December 1946. Now I'm going to skip here some stuff. From the late 40s through the mid-1960s, our party, that's the Communist Party, although forced to go underground again in 1948, was in the front ranks of the forces which offered all-around resistance to various forays of the imperialists and their allies in Lebanon and the entire region. The Baghdad Pact, and that's the Eisenhower Doctrine, and the Islamic Pact. Let me skip that. Okay, this is same article, same Lebanon. With regard to organizational matters, the Second Congress was the starting point of efforts to ensure strict observance of Leninist norms and reinstate the principle of democratic centralism. Turning their backs on the period of self-imposed isolation, Lebanon's communists entered the stage of enlarging their membership by admitting working people, above all workers and peasants, and of creating a mass party. The communists always work for mass influence. Mass influence builds you a mass party. Mass parties campaign. They change mass moods, mass thought patterns. They get people elected. They get people thrown out of office. It's a mass movement. The communists always stress they got to work wherever there are masses. Wherever there are large gatherings or less groupings of people, communists have to be in there to gain influence and ultimately control. And each group the communists are controlling, they pull them together to make a mass movement. Everything is a mass movement. So the communist movement in America is a mass movement. This anti-Trump stuff is a mass movement. All around the world, people are hating America now, thinking it's dangerous here because of Trump and ICE and what's going on. Okay, it goes on here. The party elaborated its political line in greater depth in the third 1972 and fourth 1979 Congresses, Communist Party Congresses. The latter examined the internal and external cause of the Arab National Liberation Movement and boldly raised the question of a revolutionary alternative to this movement at the current stage. In a situation when reactionary fascist quarters had forced the communists to take up arms, the Congress stated that the task of creating a mass militant party acquired increased urgency. So they have a mass movement, a mass party. Now they're getting militant because you had forces there trying to stop the communists. Maybe some of the colonial powers didn't entirely want to give up control because they know how the Soviets were working. Now, this is important. It doesn't matter how old this is. Okay, I'm getting to the last part here. I'm trying to make it shorter because most people maybe, you see, the Lebanese Communist Party holds a worthy place among these forces. Guided by the program adopted by the Second Congress, by the statements of the Third and Fourth, the decisions of Congress is heroically and proudly holding aloft. Let me pass that. Okay, they talk about the big event included the powerful popular action in West Beirut, which, okay, this is it. The more important events recurred in Lebanon include the powerful popular action in West Beirut, which forced the U.S. Marines and other NATO troops to pull out of Lebanon. Now, we say Hezbollah. America, our media, say Hezbollah forced the Marines out of Lebanon. Here, the Communist Party, the party of a new type, founded by the Soviets, working with the Soviets, trained by the Soviets. The Communist Party takes credit for the U.S. Marines. So, party of a new type. Each member of the party has to go out and influence groups and mass movements. So, the Communist Party, the Palestinian Communist Party, when you read their publications, that became the PLO. So here, just add this up. This is why the background matters. So the Lebanese Communist Party takes credit for chasing the U.S. Marines out. We say it was Hezbollah. Well, if you add it up and just look at it, Hezbollah may have been the ones that chased the U.S. Marines out, but that's also the Lebanese Communist Party, just like the Palestinian Committee is the PLO. Okay, just like the American Communist Party is now the Democrat Party in America. Now, once you people start understanding this, now there's nobody in our government that knows this. This is way, way, way above Mike Savage and Sebastian Gorka. Okay, so they got the American troops and the NATO troops out. And they what's the word here? Abrogation of, they got these words together. It's like one long word, but it's three words. Anyway, they got rid of the humiliating agreement with Israel, the collapse of the Phalangist plans to monopolize power in the nation, and the formation of the National Unity Government under Rashid Karame. I'm probably butchering that name. These historic victories would have been impossible without the correct policy of alliances pursued by the Lebanese Communist Party, without the heroism displayed by our people, and the front of Lebanese patriotic resistance to the Israeli invaders. So the Communist Party built the PLO, the Communist Party built this movement, the Communist Party built the front of Lebanese patriotic resistance. Without the firm position of fraternal Syria and the Palestinian Revolutionary Forces, and without the effective and selfless assistance we receive from our loyal allies, above all from the USSR. So World Communist Movement, I described how they work. Lenin's party of a new type. Got to go out and influence mass moods, mass thought patterns, mass trends. Build a bigger group, maybe turn that group militant when you have to. Wage war, and you get fraternal Communist Party supporting and helping, and they all get help and weapons and training from and through the Soviets. Brilliant. Okay, it goes out here. We are preparing for the Congress under the slogan of a broad national democratic front for liberation, unity, and far-reaching democratic transformations in our country. Well, democratic is not democratic the way we use that word. Democracy is ruled by the people, and the people are represented by their Communist Party. So when they talk democratic, that's communist. So Democratic Socialists of America is basically communist. Socialism is the economics of a communist. So it's like a little bit of a word game here. It makes perfect sense. Just like when you get the numbers, the combination to a lock, you make sense of the lock. You know how to open it. Now, when you understand the Communist Party of the party of a new type, and you understand these case studies I'm giving you here, you can see how this stuff adds up. The American Communist Party got control of the Democrat Party. When I say control, that's okay. That's my opinion. That's what I'm interpreting. But the Democrat Party is carrying out all the long-range plans of the Communist Party, all the long-range plans as written by the Soviets. Now let me see what else I have here. I have so much stuff like this because every country is doing the same thing. So when Gorbachev did his big speech, May 6, 1992, Westminster College, Fulton, Missouri. It's called the End of the Cold War speech. When he said that we can't live with half the world being democratic and the other half not, our side interpreted that the democratic half was like America and the Western world, democratic. We can't live with just that's democratic. So our side interpret that Gorbachev is going to make the communists split up, stop being communists, and they're going to join the democratic world. But the democratic and democracy doesn't mean the same thing we think it means. When the communists talk democratic, that means communist. So in other words, when Gorbachev said we can't have just half the world democratic and the other half not, he was basically complaining that only half the world was communist. That's what he was doing. And he wrote about a new world order, a new world information order, a new world economic order. And he talked about strengthening the UN, having a global tax to strengthen the UN, and the UN is going to stress and enforce the peace. So the UN was set up by communists for world government. So you have communist and globalist. Globalists, it might be George Soros, who's also a communist. It could be Kissinger. We have the UN, you have all these global organizations, the Ford Foundation, Carnegie, Rockefeller. Those foundations were investigated and documented and proven to be working toward world government. That was under Carol Reese, Congressman Carol Reese. It was titled the Committee to Investigate the Tax-Exempt Foundations, otherwise known as the Reese Committee. That was Congressman Carol Reese who did investigation thoroughly, all the documentations, and he proved conclusively all those groups, Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie, are implementing plans to weaken us and start or help to build a world socialist government. George Soros is working on that. The World Economic Forum are working on that. And a lot of that comes through the UN. You have the Council on Foreign Relations. Most people in government belong to groups like this, so they penetrate our government, and people don't think they're communists because they talk in democracy. But democracy to a communist, the word has a different meaning. I mean, the left changed the meaning of marriage. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. We have 60 genders now. They've changed everything in all directions. Now let me find some more in here, and hopefully it starts clicking. Because I believe in critical mass, sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. Like sometimes when you wake up totally. Let's see what this is here. Okay, whatever here. Okay, they're talking about the youth again. See, this magazine is printed in every language, and it goes all around the country. So here they're talking about Norway. There's a lot of stuff underlined here, and that's too much to read. But they're saying here, this is like one run-on sentence or maybe a sort of small paragraph. This applies above all, again, this is the same publication, 1984. This applies above all to youth. Nearly a third of all school leavers or demobilized servicemen join the ranks of redundant people. The specter of unemployment haunts schools, including vocational ones in universities. To offer the younger generation a perspective worth fighting for is a priority task of the communist and the entire working class movement. So they're looking at, for some reason, they have a lot of unemployment in this country at the time. This is Norway, which is a pretty good country. This is Norway they're writing about in 1984. So apparently they had trouble with a lot of unemployed youth, young people that quit school or just got out of the military, and they're trying to build a movement among them. So that's one segment. I mean, they work in the broader youth, but here they're talking specifically about that age bracket. So when they work among the youth, it's every age bracket, every segment of the youth, male, female, 10 years, 15 years old, 20, 25 years old. They're serious what they do, and for some reason, people don't pay attention. And because you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. It's like if somebody's talking to you in French and you don't speak French, it doesn't mean who's talking in French that's nonsense just because you don't understand it. So once people start learning how the communists work, and you only could do that by knowing some of their history, and people, they try to silence me. When I brought up something on Sebastian Gorka's radio show a few years ago about Congresswoman from California, Maxine Waters, who's I think a Marxist, totally racist, and really, really dumb. I was talking about how she wrote a letter to Fidel Castro. So we have a congresswoman who wrote a letter to one of our worst enemies who've been flooding America with drugs, having terrorism around the world, making communist revolution throughout Africa. That's what Castro is doing. So Congresswoman Maxine Waters writes a letter to Fidel Castro urging Fidel Castro to not send back from Cuba to America, to not send back cop killer Joanne Chesimard. So that means decades ago, Maxine Waters was working with the communist movement defending a cop killer, Joanne Chesimard, who fled to Cuba. And she was writing a letter to Fidel Castro. It seemed like she knew him and was friends with him. Now, why is that important? Well, it's not important. It's 20 years ago, whatever it was. It was years ago. Well, Maxine Waters is one of the people pushing for people to riot and get out in the street with their fist in the face of MAGA. When you see somebody with a Trump hat, when you see MAGA at a restaurant, don't let them eat. Go disturb them, disturb their meal, get in their face, put your fist up in the air, yell at them, yell at them. And now she's talking militantly against ICE, militantly against MAGA, militantly against Trump. So if she exposed herself many years ago as an enemy agent, and she's still in government, and now she's promoting basically revolution here. The hatred toward MAGA is real. When the conservatives laugh and call it Trump derangement syndrome, it's not funny. I mean, if you talk to a Nazi youth in 1939 in Germany, and he's ranting and raving, sounding crazy, you don't laugh at him because he's sounding crazy, but that he's going to kill you. That's the same what's going on here. I meet people in the street fanatically anti-Trump, and you can't even talk to them. They're so brainwashed, just like the Nazis, and they call us fascist. I gotta wake people up here. Let me see if I find anything else here interesting. There's so much interesting here, but to read it, and I gotta pick through it. And I just got in. I didn't prepare. I never prepare. It's a bad habit of mine. Wonder how good it would be if I actually prepared. Okay, I'm going to skip that for a little bit. Now, I always talk about the Institute for Policy Studies. That's a tax-exempt KGB group in Washington, D.C. One of the founders was Marcus Raskin, and he said America is an open society. We're susceptible to movements of people, the population, to make movements. We could changes and make policy differences. We could weaken the U.S. intelligence. We could get more influence through the media. So Marcus Raskin was a leader and founder of that KGB front group, Institute for Policy Studies. Marcus Raskin is the father of Congressman Jamie Raskin. So Jamie Raskin publicly, openly stated he was threatening foreign countries, any foreign country that makes deals with Trump, President Trump, any foreign country that helps Trump, we're going to go after them. So here you have a sitting member of Congress whose father worked with the KGB. Marcus Raskin, this Jamie Raskin is just as crazy. So Jamie Raskin is threatening foreign countries. Now, I don't understand. How could you threaten a foreign country? A congressman should not have the power to do that. It's interfering with our policy, with our defense. Well, Jamie Raskin doesn't care because he's in a powerful group. He's a Democrat. He's got the entire media helping him. And then on one of the holidays, Jamie Raskin is wearing a yarmulke. You're supposed to believe he's a devout Christian. He's an enemy agent. It just made me think of something here. We have a congressman in New York, Goldman. I think it's Dan Goldman. He's a radical left. He's fanatically for the illegal immigration. To show you how dirty this congressman and how sleazy he is, he's got a paid advertisement promoting himself and promoting him as somebody working to keep immigrants free and safe from the radical right's attack on them. So this dirtbag Congressman Dan Goldman of New York has a guy, Hispanic guy with a Spanish, like, I don't know, maybe Puerto Rican, Dominican, a guy with a nice accent. I hear the accent all the time in New York. I had friends with an accent like that, so it's either Puerto Rican or Dominican. A guy in all black, a black shirt with the white collar. Now, I don't think he's a priest. He's a reverend. So here you have a congressman, just like Jamie Raskin, comes from a KGB-connected family. You got a congressman in New York, Dan Goldman, who's paying a religious leader to promote Dan Goldman for office, but also they're working together to help the immigrants. That's the illegal immigrants. So Dan Goldman is paying a religious leader who's promoting breaking the law This is disgusting. This is disgusting. Now, people may not remember this. Lee, you might not have known this, but years ago, we had Mayor de Blasio, a real screwball, totally communist. His wife was an admitted Marxist. She was an admitted Marxist lesbian. She married that creep, de Blasio, the mayor. The mayor, de Blasio, gave his wife $1 billion to build a health care for mental health here in New York. Nothing happened. The money disappeared, and nobody's better. They didn't treat anybody, because how could a Marxist lesbian pothead be in charge of mental health? That's like having Frankenstein in charge of surgery at a hospital. This is absolutely crazy. So getting this guy here, this reverend, for a reverend to be promoting illegal immigration. Now, I know that religious people are supposed to care about the downtrodden and the poor and the needy, but you can't be promoting breaking the law. And Dan Goldman gets a guy to do this. Is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. I was outraged when I saw it. I didn't think I was able to be any more outraged than I am already. Now, one of the things here I showed you in one of these presentations, the Communist Party, how they work. Very well trained, totally coordinated. They admit they're coordinated on every issue. They have different agreements, but they work it out. And the fact that they're behind everything, and people think like we wake up all of a sudden now there's Trump derangement syndrome. Well, this Trump derangement syndrome is the same group and the same movement that was underground in Cuba and got Castro in power. It was the same group that was in the underground in Iran and toppled the Shah. It's the same kind of people, it's the same kind of party, and it's the same movement. And now they're better coordinated around the world. So now we're having a little bit maybe of a problem in Iran. Maybe things weren't going as we hoped. And when you get conservatives start complaining about Trump, nitpicking and complaining, that's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. When you get the right and left working together, we're in trouble. Now, Tucker Carlson, I don't know what happened to him. Nobody makes changes like that unless he got hit in the head with a hammer or had a bad trip and it screwed his brain up. Candace Owens, for their hatred of Israel and Jews. I mean, I can see being annoyed at a group for something they did, but to hate a whole country when they're under attack and blaming Israel for the attack the fight we're in now. And to me, it's clear. I'm sure of it, even if I can't prove it, document it. Syria. I mean, what the attack that Hamas did in Gaza, that was done to provoke a counterattack. Otherwise, they just could have stayed where they are and shoot some missiles over. To come in and kill men, but really women and children, raping, cutting heads off. You could do that if you're severely hate-filled toward those people. But when you do it to the extent they did it, they wanted the response. Now, maybe they didn't think the response would be as big as it is or as was, but maybe this was the case. Maybe they wanted us to use up our stockpile of weapons and ammunition. Because if Russia and China are planning for a war, and on some levels it looks like that could be the case, so if they're going to have a war, wouldn't it be better if they have us where we don't have the weapons or the ammunition? Because we used it with Ukraine and Israel. We had to use it with and for Israel. We had to use it for Ukraine. So the communists, the policy they're pushing, what they're aiming for is ridiculous on its face, socialism. The whole thing sounds insane, but because the end result doesn't work, doesn't mean their strategy and tactics, their subversion, the perversion, they do very well making a revolution, very well exploiting people. The end result is a system that's horrible. But you don't look at the system. The economics doesn't work. So you don't say the economics doesn't work. Therefore, you're dismissive of it, which is absolutely insane That's what the enemy would want. They would want us to ignore them and be dismissive of it, that they can't do anything. Their economy stinks. But they're able to get people out in the street in riots. They're able to topple countries. They're able to make mass movements, mass thought patterns. They're able to get their people elected. They're able to get our people out of office. They're able to make revolutions simultaneously all around the world and in every segment of every country. It is brilliant. So I read here one time, in one of these presentations, statement of 81 communist and workers' parties meeting in Moscow, USSR, 1960. 1960, why is it relevant now? Well, recently, several months ago, I had put the radio on. Mark Levin was reading something, and I'm still not sure what that was, but it had something to do with Trump's peace plan. And one of the things, so I don't know if this was in the peace plan or the peace agreement, but Mark Levin was reading it. So I turned the radio on sort of midstream. I don't know what he was reading, but it had something to do with the peace plan. And in that peace plan, as Mark Levin was reading it, the term, the phrase peaceful coexistence was in it. So I called up Mark Levin radio, and he was friendly with me most of the time. I mean, all the time until that. In fact, Mark Levin said on the radio that he learned a lot listening to Jimmy from Brooklyn over the years on the Bob Grant show. Mark Levin one time on the radio also said that he asked me, he told me I should write a book. So Mark Levin and me got along pretty well. Now, I don't like the idea, he talks about Marxism, because communism's the word that should be used there, but maybe I'm just being nitpicking here. But that term peaceful coexistence, I called up and tried to explain to Mark Levin there's something wrong, because that peaceful coexistence doesn't mean what it sounds like. And he got kind of annoyed at me, which was kind of shocking. So, but democracy and democratic, that word means communism. Peace sounds good, but to a communist, you only have peace once communist forces are victorious. So it's this Orwellian kind of talk. So peaceful coexistence. Now, when Reagan and Gorbachev were making one of the peace deals about the weapons, in the agreement there was the phrase peaceful coexistence. When Reagan read that, he crossed it out with his pen. He crossed it out and said no, he crossed it out. They had to rewrite the agreement. Reagan knew what peaceful coexistence was. It sounds good, but it's not. So here's what the communists say. The policy of peaceful coexistence meets the basic interest of all peoples, of all who want no new cruel wars and seek a durable peace. This policy strengthens the positions of socialism, okay? So peaceful coexistence strengthens socialism, which means communism, okay? It strengthens socialism, enhances the prestige and international influence of the socialist countries, and promotes the prestige and influence of the communist parties in capitalist countries, okay? I'm telling you, the communist parties, enormous influence. Each party member has to go out, influence other groups. They make a mass movement. They change mass thought patterns. They change masses of votes. So here, peaceful coexistence serves the basic interest, meets all the interests of all the peoples, of all who want no new cruel wars, and they seek a durable peace. This policy strengthens the positions of socialism and enhances the prestige and international influence of the socialist countries and promotes the prestige and influence of the communist parties in the capitalist countries. So peaceful coexistence is a stepping up of the war. It's not pulling back. They call it peaceful coexistence because this influences the masses. They write it here in 1960. It increases the influence and prestige of the communist parties in the capitalist countries. That's right there. One sentence, two sentences, whatever. Peace is a loyal ally of socialism, for time is working for socialism against capitalism. So this is a way to wage war. Now, this is not counting as they're doing this. They're also waging war socially, culturally, politically, economically. So as they're doing peaceful coexistence, they're brainwashing and indoctrinating the youth in this country. They penetrated the schools, the media. So this is how they're going to win. They keep us from fighting. They put us to sleep, and then they're going to crush a peaceful coexistence all the way back in 1960. Now, it goes on, even explaining it more. The policy of peaceful coexistence is a policy of mobilizing the masses and launching vigorous action against the enemies of peace. Well, the enemies of peace would be the people calling for a strong military. It would be the military leaders. It would be the political leaders who are patriotic. It would be the teachers that might be teaching the kids a good history about America. So they would be considered the enemies of peace, because peace means communism. Okay? Peaceful coexistence of states does not imply renunciation of the class struggle as the revisionists claim. The coexistence of states with different social systems is a form of class struggle between socialism and capitalism. In conditions of peaceful coexistence, favorable opportunities are provided for the development of the class struggle in the capitalist countries and the national liberation movements of the peoples in the colonial and dependent countries. In their turn, successes of the revolutionary class, the communists consider it their duty to fortify the faith of the people in the possibility of furthering peaceful coexistence, their determination to prevent world war. They will do their utmost for the people to weaken imperialism, which means America, and limit its sphere of action by an active struggle for peace, democracy, and national liberation. So they're going to struggle for peace. That means we're going to struggle for communism. The people are going to love the peace. Well, the peace means they're going to love communism. So peaceful coexistence, that goes on. There's more here on that. Now, at this point, 1960, national liberation movements. That's when you had mostly Britain and England. There was some Spain and some German colonies or former colonies throughout Africa and Latin America. So peaceful coexistence is a way to wage war. But at that time, they're also doing national liberation. National liberation, those countries that have colonial powers or ex-colonial powers who are still maybe in the countries, and they claim we were a colonial power because we fought in France, we were an aggressor. Not France, I meant in Vietnam. And we have an island by Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a possession of America, so they would do national liberation. Now, national liberation is the nation, but they also do gay liberation, women's liberation, youth liberation, black liberation, Asian liberation, LGBTQ liberation. So liberation means communists taking over. Peace means communism. So their words have meanings, but they're different than ours. So just as you need a combination to open a combination lock, or you need a key to open a lock, I'm giving you the definition of the words and what they mean. I'm giving you in the historical context how they used those words and what they meant, because now we see the results. There are no more colonial powers. The only country now that's occupying and in most countries of the world now is Communist China. Now you have Cuban troops in Africa, tens of thousands of Cuban troops that occupied Africa. Well, we made a deal. So we're going to stop aiding the groups in Africa who are fighting against communism, with the agreement that the Cuban troops leave Africa. Well, tens of thousands of Cuban troops changed their citizenship. So technically there's no Cuban troops in Africa because now they're, whatever country they're in, they got citizenship. Our side, it's almost like our side and the enemy are working together, because our side just keeps getting outsmarted. So peaceful coexistence is not a good thing. Now it says here about national liberation. National liberation revolutions have triumphed in vast areas of the world. About 40 new sovereign states have arisen in Asia and Africa in the 15 post-war years. Remember, this is 1960, 15 years after the war. The victory of the Cuban Revolution has powerfully stimulated the struggle of Latin American peoples for the complete national independence, okay, a national movement. Now, they usually call people who are nationalists fascist, but the communists build nationalist movement first to get influence in the country, because people gravitate more to national loyalty than they do to a global loyalty to a movement run, basically controlled by Russia. A new historical period has set in the life of mankind. The peoples of Asia, Africa, and Latin America that have won their freedom have begun to take an active part in world politics. Okay? In the Soviet publications, they repeatedly say Africa, Asia, Latin America, Africa, Asia, Latin America. So when the communists make a revolution there and free them or liberate them from the colonial powers, the communists get in there. So you have communists maybe getting control of the country, and those communists from that country run the country. But so those communists from that country running that country, but Russia is in charge of them, because the communist parties were controlled by the Soviet Communist Party. Now the Chinese Communist Party is involved. So those countries are indoctrinated against world imperialism and colonialism. We have to crush world imperialism. And then they say America is the leader of world of churches, totally penetrated by communists. And they teach that capitalism has to be destroyed. And to be a good Christian, you have to undermine its vast economic and political apparatus. That's in the capitalist countries. So the communists take over those countries, and then now, because of a communist front group in America and the communists in America, communist China sent a virus that changes how we vote. The communists in America have been indoctrinating our students for 70 or 80 years. So they sent us a virus. We have loads of indoctrinated students who got out of school, they grew up, they vote. They changed how we vote, and now they got our guy out of office. They got their guy in. Their guy in that the communists helped get in office opens the border and floods our country with people from Africa, Asia, Latin America. Now, I'm not saying all of them coming in are anti-American. They're not all coming in as being communist Christians, but a lot of them are. And you get the Muslim element coming in that's radicalized. Now, some of them are communist, pretending to be Muslim. But that's how the Christians work, too. We got people in the Christian religion who are, some of them are priests. We have a Catholic priest in Nicaragua. What's his name? His name slipped my mind. Can't remember every single thing I know. Anyway, there's a Catholic priest in Nicaragua who told his troops, there is no God, there is no Jesus Christ. You are the God, and Jesus Christ is the revolution. And liberation theology, the penetration of the Christian church, teaches Christians in the capitalist countries must work to undermine its vast economic and political apparatus. And decades ago, the communists said they're going to send, I think they said 20 million. The number doesn't matter. 10 million, why quibble? 10 million, 20 million. They're going to send us millions of people indoctrinated or trained in liberation theology. So if they do that, let's say it's only 10 million people. 10 million people coming in as Christians, but they're trained in liberation theology, and their God tells them you got to tear down the economic and political system in the country they're coming to. See, the enemy works in every group on every level. Now, the communists working in a Muslim country, they're going to work largely through Islam. So if they get a whole group, a whole section of a religion believing they're fighting for God, and their God is telling them you got to tear down the capitalist economics and political union, and just watch what they unleashed here. You've got little children's genitals being mutilated. You've got perverts teaching class. They put books in our schools where kids in the 6th grade have diagrams on how 4 or 5 boys could lay down together and how they could put things where they don't belong and have orgies. The Kremlin, the KGB has to be laughing like schoolgirls. So you got Muslims who think they have to destroy the West because Allah wants it. You have Christians who think they have to destroy the Western world. You have the churches. The Catholic Church now is into the environmental movement. So I see ads in the newspaper for Catholic schools because Catholic schools are better than regular public schools. But even in a good school like a Catholic school, they're going to be indoctrinating kids to embrace the environmental movement, which is a communist movement. We have to destroy our energy sector to save the planet. Then we have to buy windmills and solar panels from communist China. And China's building like 2 coal-fired power plants a week or a month or some crazy number. Look, at every level being outplayed and just outmatched. So when I get this information to you people, you have to spread it. And when I mention a book to read, it's a book. At some point, you have to trust me. At some point, you have to trust me. 40 years ago, I was warning about the Soviet hand in the Muslim glove. And now Putin is saying he supports Iran. Now, he always did, but now he's publicly saying he supports Iran. He's going to stand by him. But we talked about the Muslim radicals leaving Iran. The idea was they'll go to Moscow. Now, why Russia? Soviet hand in the Muslim glove. So it's not a new development Marxist connection to radical Islam. No, it's over 100 years in Soviet publications. Lenin, the Soviet founder, was working with Muslims. And when he got the Muslims to embrace the communist system, those Muslims put out fatwas on other Muslims that refused to put down their guns and accept the Soviet system. That's in writing. And the Soviets, they send the Soviet Muslim Republic, Central Asia. I have publications from the Soviet Union talking about Central Asia. It is absolutely incredible. Now, related to that, there was a guy, Ahmad, give me a second. Ahmad. There was a Muslim guy who wrote a book called Jihad. Now, he wasn't supporting it. I know his name, I have the book, I just forget it. In that book, it's about Central Asia. So in Central Asia, now this was supposedly Soviet collapse. I'm thinking Ahmad Jabril, but that's not it. That was the leader of the Popular Front Liberation of Palestine. Ahmad Rashid, okay, and the book is Jihad. In that book, he writes about the former Soviet Muslim republics. So you have now listen to this, a former communist leader in the country. This is every country. But a former communist is leading the country, and he's a harsh dictatorship. So the Muslims are getting angry at him and rising up against a former communist who's leading the country. Now the opposition to that former communist, the opposition is led by a former communist. So that's all those countries. In other words, the communists control both sides. They control the existing government, and then there's a movement to topple that existing government that's also led by a communist. Now, this is what I worry about with a place like Iran. Maybe part of this movement against this radical Islamic dictatorship, maybe this movement, maybe among them there's communists there pretending to be Muslim or pretending to be against the government. We don't know, because that's how the enemy works. I say, when you own all the horses in the horse race, you can't lose. So before the Soviets did their split or their breakup, let's say 90, 91, let's say 91, okay? Before that, a few years before that, maybe 4 years before that, in the Soviet publications, the Soviets were writing. Now remember, the leaders of the Communist Party, all the top officials in the communist government read this literature. I do too, but other people don't. It's meant for the leadership or high-level people. They wrote that if we continue on the path we're on and things break up, you're all free to go out and join or make other groups and other parties, all socialist. So you do a fake split, you create a multi-party system, all socialist. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's almost comical in its simplicity. It's simple when you just give the basics, but then there are fine, minute details. And when you see all of that, it is absolutely brilliant. We haven't had any real defectors from it as far as I know. And there's this bad mentality in America where people don't trust defectors. Sometimes a defector is fake and he gives you wrong information. We know people, there's a couple of people I know of, defectors from the communist movement, from the Soviets. They defected and spent many years denouncing communism, denouncing and exposing Soviet operations. They spent many years doing that. One guy I know, I don't want to mention names, and just in case I'm wrong, one of the guys I know of had professionally made displays where they roll it out like they unroll it and they hang it up on the board, and you walk past it like looking at paintings in a museum, and you see the documents, you see the stuff he posted up. You see the missiles, like the megatonnage, the numbers. So let's say, I'm making up a number here. Let's say the Soviets have 10 missiles, we have 5. Theirs is 100 and ours megatons, and ours is 30. They show you that they have, let's say, 5 army tanks to R1. So he was constantly showing that their military was stronger than us, the danger. He did a perfect job. He did an excellent job. And then when Gorbachev came to power, this guy says we have to embrace Gorbachev. Now, Gorbachev was a communist. He was pushing peaceful coexistence. When he said we can't have half the world democratic and the other half not, the half he was talking about being democratic is the communist half, because democracy means rule by the people, and the people are represented by their Communist Party. So this guy, in my opinion, I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I don't want to say the name just in case I'm wrong. This guy built, over a couple of decades, he built a really good reputation as an anti-communist. Like I have a reputation like that. But this guy, in my opinion, invested that time to build that reputation. And then the big thing was when he embraced Gorbachev. He pulled good people who he convinced. He made himself a valid, certifiable anti-communist who was exposing the danger of the enemy and even exposing some secret stuff that gives you credibility. So if he was an enemy agent, that's exactly the way you do it. To have influence, you got to have credibility. He spent decades building credibility. Therefore, when he embraced Gorbachev, when he said we defeated communism, a lot of people accepted it because that guy was a trustworthy guy in their mind. I'm thinking, no. I'm thinking he now I could be wrong. This is why I don't want to mention the name. Now, at a meeting, I suggested this. At a meeting we were at, and he was there. And he started yelling, "You're going to burn, you're all going to burn." And then I said, it's interesting how when an enemy agent gets flustered and exposed, sometimes they blow their cover. So I didn't flat out call him an enemy agent, but I implied it to his face. So, like I said, maybe I'm wrong because a lot of people embrace Gorbachev, and they were wrong. And now maybe it doesn't matter, but I believe you have to know the history. You have to know where things begin. The enemy talks about the founding fathers had slavery, so they know the history. So we could say now it doesn't matter, founding fathers, that's a long time ago. We praise the founding fathers. We talk about their brands, the things they wrote, the things, even if they had slaves, they built a movement, they built a system, they built an idea that even if they didn't abide by their idea and the moral code that we have today, what they wrote was still good. If a doctor is an oncologist and he's preaching against smoking because it causes lung cancer, and then he goes outside and smokes a cigarette, so the doctor isn't following his beliefs, it doesn't mean his beliefs and his activity against cancer and against smoking is wrong. So the founding fathers had some things wrong, but in that era, that was the way the world was. But the enemy goes back to the founding fathers because they know the beginning. If the inception of America was wrong and bad, then we're bad now. And we say, well, because the founding fathers were so smart, they set up a pretty perfect system that it's good. So sometimes the past matters. So when I talk about Castro, when I talk about this communist meeting in 1960, it's indicative of the situation we're in today, how we got here. So I guess that's it for now, and I'm very glad here. Oh, again, let me get back here real quick because I'm running out of time. Statement of 81 Communist and Workers' Parties, meeting Moscow, USSR, 1960. You know it says Communist and Workers' Parties. Communist parties are ones openly called and declared to be communist. You have other communist parties that call themselves workers' parties. Sometimes they call them the Party of Labor. But here they're just putting it together. Clearly it's all communist. And I read you some stuff. There's a lot of stuff here. But what makes it interesting, this booklet, okay, they call this a booklet. This new booklet, in this publication I'm reading, the last page, they're advertising a booklet that's coming out, not this one, but in this publication I read from, they're advertising another booklet. The very last paragraph, this new booklet takes on enhanced relevance in light of the historic 15 United Nations General Assembly, where the continuing struggles for peaceful coexistence reached new heights under the vigorous advocacy of the socialist countries headed by the Soviet Union. Gus Hall, 1982, I did this the other day on this channel. I read a paragraph from Gus Hall, head of the American Communist Party, 1982, where he wrote, "There's no way anyone can unlink the Soviet Union and the socialist countries from the world revolutionary process." Also, I've been for 40 years explaining peaceful coexistence, and I did this on this channel the other day, and I did it again now. I also described the UN, world government, the communist world government, working together. So here in this one paragraph, this booklet, the one they're promoting here, this new booklet takes on enhanced relevance in light of the historic 15th United Nations General Assembly, okay? General Assembly promoted by the communists here, the Soviets, 150 million people murdered by the communists. Here they're promoting the UN. It goes on. 15th United Nations General Assembly, where the continuing struggle for peaceful coexistence, okay? They're promoting communism in this UN publication. Reached new heights under the vigorous advocacy of the socialist countries headed by the Soviet Union. So, no way anyone could unlink the Soviet Union and the socialist countries from the world revolutionary process. The head of the Communist Party wrote that years ago. Now, you see the United Nations set up by communists and globalists working together. And this is promoting the General Assembly, pushing peaceful coexistence, which means that's how they're going to defeat us. And it's headed by the Soviet Union. We had it all together. You have the World Council of Churches, the World Peace Council, the World Council of Churches, 3 globalist groups. You have the United Nations. You have Ford Foundation, Carnegie, Rockefeller. You have the Council on Foreign Relations. When you see Hillary Clinton speaking on the stage of the Council on Foreign Relations, when you see Biden on the stage of the Council on Foreign Relations, when you see George Soros on the stage of the Council on Foreign Relations, you know that's a bad group. And many, if not most of the people that get in our government are from the Council on Foreign Relations. So you have the globalists, the communists working together in every country, at every level. They're working in every group in America. It's like 40 different groups, Puerto Rican, Asian, Chinese, Vietnamese, every group they're working in. It's massive, it's all connected, it's all networked, it's huge, and there's really nothing to counter it. Now, perhaps the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies could get involved. I don't see them. Maybe they're doing things I just don't hear about. The Heritage Foundation, I hear nothing. But if we could get a committee together and get the Heritage Foundation, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, get all the major conservative media celebrities, all the conservative leaders, get them together in an auditorium, pack the auditorium with these people, and I'll be on stage with Trevor Loudon, Bill Jasper, Jeff Nyquist, Lee here, Mr. Lee, and of course Johnny Anderson. We're on the stage. We could educate those people. We could handle the questions. They could submit questions beforehand. We could prepare. We could get documents. We could put them up on a screen, publish them, put them out, hand them out to them. These people could be educated, totally educated and informed, and then go back to their radio show, to their TV show, to the Congress, to the Senate, and mount the movement against the movements that are trying to destroy us. UN, Council on Foreign Relations, Ford Foundation, Carnegie, Rockefeller Foundation, and of course the Communist parties, which now is the Democrat Party. They control the education, information, and communication. They got control of most of the unions. They penetrated all the religions. There's nothing organized at any level strong enough to counter that. We have the knowledge to help educate people to it. We don't have organization or money to do it. I have no way to do that. Maybe somebody, a guy like Musk, what's his name, Musk?
Elon.
Yeah. He's offering, this is beautiful, he's offering to pay the TSA workers at the airports. He's willing to pay them to keep the airports open so we don't have a tragedy. That's great. The communists have billionaires who spend money to destroy us and to defeat us. Imagine if Musk would fund work we could do. We could get this stuff out. The publications I have, it's fantastic. Everything is here. There's very, very little that the enemy's doing that they don't write about. They don't openly talk about the drugs, but in their publication they were promoting FARC. That's the communist terror group in Nicaragua. So our government is totally penetrated. I think I made the case. And I go back here and wait till I have whole books just on the Soviets working with the Muslims. It is absolutely shocking. It's in print. So I read some of it here. I only have handy stuff now, the little few odds and ends. I have stuff packed away that's like a treasure chest. It should be very valuable for our lives. There should be a huge monetary value to it, because this will open a lot of locks. A lot of locks and combinations will be open. This is like it's a treasure trove of secrets that was openly published, but nobody paid attention. Anyway, I thank you for the opportunity here. People, spread the word. The government now is looking at the Russian collusion hoax. I'm not sure if it's a full-fledged investigation, but the book, The Red Thread by Diana West, she did the investigation on all these degenerates behind this movement. They all have communist connections, some of them huge connections. So all the key players in the Russian collusion hoax that targeted Trump and MAGA, they caused the death of hundreds of thousands of unarmed non-combatant Americans, opening the borders, flooding us with drugs. Now, if you kill unarmed non-combatants, that's considered a war crime. So I would say, I don't know legally if that's the case, public opinion-wise, the case could be made and argued, I could do it, that these people who did what they did, Fauci, working with the enemy, they make a virus that supposedly escapes, and people deny that. I think it was done here purposely, just in time to change the way we vote. The most crucial election that we lost, and it caused a lot of deaths. So, war criminals, we have to have hearings. The American population, so much of the American population believes things that are patently false, actually ridiculous, and they believe it, and they're willing to fight and yell and attack you if you don't agree with them. And they call people fascist. That's the reputation of fascists, where you can't reason with them. They yell, scream in your face. And that's how these people are. And it's the communists getting control of them. It's like an evil spirit taking over a body. So people that you knew were normal and decent, you see how they're different now? That's the impact of the enemy's propaganda. It's perfection. Anyway, again, thank you, Lee, and all your listening audience. Play this again, hear it again, listen again, spread the word. Listen to my other interviews at JRNYQUIST, JRNyquist.blog. We do dynamic independence with Johnny in Germany, and we do this here. And Diana West's book, The Red Thread, is very important to what's going on now. So say your prayers, spread the word. We're in a battle here, and we may be getting a bullets and bombs battle coming soon. So be prepared, be prepared. Thank you, Lee, for giving me this chance, and I want to do more.
Anytime, Jimmy.
All right, so God bless everybody. Spread the word. Get active.
Have a great night, my friend.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.